series that I thought were going to be really one-sided that were absolutely not. For example, Zero, I feel like really showed up. And then we had series like that last one that I thought, might be just as close as people were expecting Zero, or as Zero and Tempest ended up, and then it just did not end up that way because SBT took a different route. They took we're going to go all in on the draft, and when that backfires, it backfires big, as you saw.
It did. And that lets MVP Black be safe for now. We'll see them tomorrow. We're going to take a break. When we come back, our first elimination match of the Eastern Clash.
Heroes of the Storm. Prepare for Heroes Brawl, the new game mode that breaks all the rules. Rated T13. Another round?
It's not easy being queen. So many subjects to keep in line. So many scores to settle. I am the Swarm. And vengeance has never looked this good.
I was once a far strider. I swore an oath to defend Silvermoon and its people to my dying breath. It was not enough. My homeland still burned. But those days are long past. And history will not repeat itself. I am Sylvanas Windrunner, Queen of the Forsaken. And if you will not serve me in this life, then you will do so in the next.
My people lost everything. Their light was extinguished, replaced by a hunger for magic and vengeance. We became the Blood Elves. Now, I will fight for my homeland. Selama Ashalanore. I am Prince Kael'thas, and the time for a reckoning has come!
Welcome back to the Eastern Clash. We are nearing the end of day one as we are getting close to a conclusion, but first we must move through the losers bracket. Right now, Resurgence, Zero, Team Face Check, and Super Perfect Team will be fighting for their tournament lives. But our first match of the day, Resurgence versus Zero. Dread, what are you thinking?
I mean, I think, you know, after watching the first series of Zero, they definitely have a lot of things going right for them to where they've got to feel comfortable going up against Resurgence here. I really feel like Resurgence has something to prove in this series to be able to move on throughout this tournament. That being said, Zero also was a bit shaky in the first series of the day.
A bit shaky towards the end, a couple of slight errors in terms of shot calls. Those slight errors were enough to just topple a game. It almost felt like they were throws to a degree. So yes, I hope that they clear that up and get that underway. Now, to be fair, they were facing off against Tempest. Tempest, a strong team in itself. Korea, known for finding small mistakes and just absolutely capitalizing. So far, Zero has been the team that has looked the best against a Korean representative. So, one would hope that they can get through the loser bracket, but again, Resurgence from SEA hoping to make sure that that does not happen.
Yeah, that's going to be their game plan here. And as we can see, we've got our map bands out. Where are we going to be going for game one? And it is going to be Tomb of the Spider Queen. Wave Clear City when it comes to priority on this map. A couple other heroes, you know, pop up maybe that we haven't seen so far into the tournament, like more frequent Johanna is going to be more popular as there. Tassadar still going to have the power spike that he has. Zarya is still, you know, phenomenal on this type of map as well. So I expect, you know, to be standard drafts for the most parts for these teams. But that being said, standard is very different depending on which region we're looking at here.
That is really true, especially when you look at Resurgence. Resurgence is a team that I don't really look at and they scream, okay, we're willing to play wave clear and map control. They seem to really enjoy playing heroes that allow them to get into isolations and get into individual solo pickoffs with Vala with the solo DPS. Even in the past, they've ran a lot of Medivh. I will say that we've seen Ragnaros and Dahaka from them in the past, but still, I just don't know if this really plays towards our strengths compared to Zero, who has shown us that they are willing to just divide and conquer them alongside other Chinese teams that have been running Zagara like crazy.
Yeah, so I am actually a bit concerned with that exact topic point. So, you know, I think Gilly also touched up on it a bit with the adjustments that we've seen throughout the history of the, you know, the themes of China with the, you go from the death ball to the overall, you know, talking about SPT busting out the Zagara, and suddenly after that happened, it seemed like China focused so much on macro that they neglected the micro team fighting oriented playstyle. And I'm afraid on a map like this that they're going to put too much emphasis on their draft to be macro focused, that they kind of neglect their opportunity for a team fight, and that might be an opportunity for Resurgence to try and abuse, at least in the draft.
Well, we'll see if they can even attempt to do that. Now, looking over to the drafts real quickly, we have a ban from ETC, a ban of Zarya, and then Tassadar pickup. Both teams here in first their games of the day both allow Tassadar to go through to see if their opponent would pick it up. Zero is going to be the receiving end here of their Tassadar, which means over to the left, Resurgent should be getting their Vala. The problem is they banned out Zarya. Usually you get that Vala-Zarya mix up. In the past, we did see them grab the Vala as well as a support. So we'll see what they plan to go with in this route. Last time they actually picked up Vala and Malfurion.
The Malfurion, I think, is a smart pick here. It does lead to a pretty solid Lucio rotation on the side of Zero. With the Tassadar pickup, it's really nice to be able to negate the burst, because that obviously is the biggest downside to having a Lucio on your team. They're going to lock in a Morales and Lunara, though. Interesting choices here. Lunara, you know, not one to really kind of strike her way into the meta too frequently, but when she does, she can be a very impactful hero. But this high in a draft, I'm not going to say it's a 0% chance, there was a very low chance that that was going to be contested on the side of Zero. So that leads to one of two things. Either Resurgence priority on Lunara here is just absurdly high because it's a must-have for a unique strategy that they can't risk it being scouted out on the second ban phase, or just a misplay in priority. I'm hoping it's going to be case number one in this situation.
I think most people would automatically say it's a misplay, though. You automatically give away the duo that everyone fears, Tassadar and Vala.
But, I mean, okay, so when it comes to that trade-off, obviously, yes,
you know it's going to happen.
It's a risk.
Exactly.
You knew you were going to step into that. So it's more of the next two picks, and specifically more the last pick, have to be so in a weird direction that you can understand the Lunara needed to be a must pick. Literally, the strategy can't work without this hero, and the Morales as well, with that higher priority. So It's just more of that, you know, I'm not comfortable saying that at least yet, and we'll see how it moves through the rest of this draft, but it was risky to show that this early on and giving such a powerful dynamic duo there with the TAS Vala 4-0. Ariel was removed. Don't want to give up the TAS Vala and Ariel, the trio that is so powerful for so long. And Dibble's going to be dropped out here for 0.
I was thinking about the Leoric ban instead, but Diablo being the ban here. Do you think Leoric works here with Team of the Spider Queen? Old Fnatic.
Yeah,
you
oh,
get
absolutely.
The wave clear you set up. It's Johanna and Leoric are the choices, so you ban out one of those two.
And yeah, when looking at the, you know, we were talking about where's the Lunara, why that high up, it would lead more towards a heavy, only worried about wave clear, only worried about those type of play, and Leoric fits right into that direction. So I agree with you. I think that could be the case of where they go. So there's going to be the Zool, again, more focus onto the macro. So we see with the attempt and the thought process here behind Resurgence, and then, yeah, that very last pick, it's got to be like a JoJo or it's going to be the Leoric. I personally don't want it to be Johanna because then they have no solo. So I would like to see that Leoric as the last pick here for Resurgence. And that, again, and now we understand a bit more into that Lunara pick that high, the direction they were moving. Falstad on this map, not one we see too often, but I mean, I'm not against it. You know, we still can see the Gathering Storm build still going to be effective in a 4, and he's just so powerful across the board that I don't think he needs to be on a big map. So I like this for Resurgence and the changes. It's very risky, but, you know, I think they have to pull something out unique here to be successful against Zero.
And I like actually that they hold off on their warrior towards the end. If you see the opposing opponents actually get Lucio, I think Leoric's the way to go. The ability to have Entomb and drop it on top of Lucio is a great way to handle him. He has a decent escape, but at least he gets him locked down for a small amount of time. With it being Rhaegar, I kind of want Johanna a little bit more, but you do have the point that there is no bottom lane at all. The Blessed Shield would be strong here, but again, that bottom lane, who's going to fill it in? And Leoric seems to be the one that bubbles up to the top.
There is a different laning strategy you can make if you pick the Johanna. If they go that direction, I'll talk about it a little bit. It's really hard and I would say a bit too risky.
Is Dahaka weird here too? At least you get a laner.
Not as bad. The Tyrion's okay.
Okay.
Tyrion's fine. It's going to be decent and can hold his own when it comes to the solo, so that's going to be fine. It does make them a bit more team fight oriented, which again, their composition I think will be struggling in that department, considering the, you know, we have the TAS Vala, we have the Ragnars, and such a strong Murden. The wave clear department has to be not only, it has to be overly successful for the draft right now on the side of Resurgence, because if they go on even footing, especially after the second turn-in usually, after that like 11, 12, 13 range, if they're on even experience between the two teams, Resurgence is going to fall off in their team fight potential if they're not talent tiers up.
I think there is a slight saving grace with the Lunara spiking up slightly, but it's not an Azebo spike. Like normally you have the Zul and Azebo, but you still have that power. So there is a slight chance, but I agree with you. It's usually when you have the Zul and you're dealing with it, the pressure coming your way, you have to have some kind of advantage. And the thing is you look over to the opposing team and they have decent wave clear themselves. They can actually handle Zul pressure coming their way. You have Tassadar, who is probably one of the strongest supports for wave clear with that Side Storm. If you really needed to, you could put Tassadar on the bottom lane, because Tyrael's not going to push that lane, and you can throw Ragnaros in the rotation, and you can get your Q stacked up, and you can actually use Molten Core too if anything crazy happens.
The one advantage we could see out of Resurgence is trying to abuse the fact that, yes, there is a reasonable response out of Zero's draft to deal with the Zul directly if you go blow for blow in the same lanes. But if you make the opposite rotation, so rather than going through mid-top, move towards that mid-bottom and catch them off guard, or even start bottom first, which China was actually the first region to do that as well, to start in the off lane to catch your opponents off guard in that rotation, then they could catch them off guard because they'll be so slow in the response that the Zul will gain an upper hand for the first couple of minutes. That being said, it should stabilize. But again, using that surprise, maybe a surprise factor, the Zero we saw from them making those unconventional rotations with that Zul and a dominant wave clear, Resurgence might be able to step ahead. But they took a lot of risks in this draft, and that being said, being the underdogs already, it makes me not that optimistic that it's going to be successful, but I appreciate the fact that at least they're trying to make changes to be able to take out Zero here.
Do you think it's an automatic pick on sanctification here? When you have your cleanse, you have your safeguard set up, Sulfur Smash, you're already pretty good to go on that regard. Do you want lockdown?
I would not. No, I would be going the Sanct. I almost 100%. Yeah.
Even with the Mighty Gust to push away from fights, because I just feel like they're not going to kill you anyways. You're playing Falstad and Miraz correctly for the most part. Again, later game it's going to happen, but I feel like if you get an early advantage and you go for a judgment, you can get some lockdown.
It used to be argued whenever we saw Miraz for the very first time ever kind of become popular and competitive outside of Braxis, you had to have both of them. That one is never enough. That almost always you bait the first one, it comes out and you go, all right, Morales is going to die. That it was only MVP Black was the first team to do it. They wouldn't pick the Morales unless they had 2 failsafes, and it was always Tyrael and it was always Falstad. That they would wait it out. And that is by far the most successful rendition historically we've ever seen of Morales outside of Tomb of the Spider Queen. It is always with 2. Every time it's 1, it seems to be very easily punished.
All right. Makes sense, man. Trying to see if Resurgence would be thinking outside the box here in any way, shape, or form. But we'll see if this wave clear push for Tomb of the Spider Queen, if you're going to run it on any battleground, this is the battleground that you run those type of strategies on. It just really hinders on you having a strong early game. Zero on the other side, I'm looking at them, and they have solid multi-shot. They have their Side Storm. They have actually drafted pretty well to handle the pressure coming their way. Now, there is always the problem of, okay, if I lose a member, 1 to 2 people, suddenly I'm losing towers, and that's when it starts to snowball heavily. So you have to play a little bit more reserved. And what we saw in the first matchup, when we saw them actually facing off against Tempest, they did have a lot of aggressive plays, but they were too willy-nilly with the idea of maybe not weighing the risk of being too aggressive. And so I'm afraid if that actually comes to bite them here, Resurgence actually might have a game plan that could work out.
I think the opposite side of that coin would be, is Resurgence good enough to get the same punishment Tempest would when those maybe over-aggressive rotations would come out? Because I agree with you that that unique rotation style is going to be a huge play here, but I actually view that as an advantage over Resurgence, where it's a disadvantage against maybe a more trained team, a more skilled team like those of the Korean region. That was even the 3rd seed, and they were able to punish that.
Well, let's see here. Zero taking on Resurgence. Here we are, moving into game number 1 in the losers brackets. Remember, our teams are fighting to survive in the tournament. On the far left, you will be having Resurgence and the blue. CW playing Zul Zappy here. Lenara Capricorn will be on Falstad, and that is a hero that he has played very often. Julian will be on Morales, and of course Yu Yang will be on Tyrael.
Here on the red team is Zero, where we have M on the Ragnaros, GD on Vala, 6 on the Murden. Tau is going to be on his Rhaegar, Melody C there on the Tassadar. When it comes to level 1s across the board, it's going to be generally overall pretty standard here. We see Tas moving in W. Murden Stormbolt is one that's kind of been hit or miss at times. No pun intended really on that one. Yeah, and we do see actually Falstad going into Season Barkman. That is the standard, if you will, for Falstad. But it does when he's off in the solo, and that is going to be the case here. Resurgence is using Falstad as their solo rather than putting Tyrael there, which is going to be something I don't think is going to be too successful into the Ragnaros, especially not pre-4. But we'll see how that plays out there for him, and it should be able to add up as the game moves on. But he's going to be very, very safe there as Capricorn. Good barrel roll to be able to get the dodge.
Watch out for that Murden. He will rotate bottom as often as possible. The good news for Resurgence, they do have that Wisp that can float around and scout that out. Now pressure on the right side here is GD is going in for the trade here on Zappy, even with the Morales working in the heals. Finally, Tassadar shield will come out, but Zul taking some damage here. There is a safeguard. Will CW be able to turn this around? There is the Bone Prison, and gosh, there is just some aggression already happening.
Yeah, a lot of pressure there for Zero trying to put it onto Morales.